Welcome back to another episode of the CyberVault. I'm very excited today to be joined by Puneet Agarwal. Puneet is partner at True Ventures and one of the most respected early stage venture firms backing founders at the very beginning of their journey. Puneet has spent years working alongside entrepreneurs across industries with a deep lens on emerging tech and cyber. And today we're going to dive into what makes a startup stand out to investors, how founders can navigate building in a crowded security market, and the biggest opportunity Puneet sees on the horizon for cyber and other AI-driven innovation. But before we unpack all of that, Puneet, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here with me today. Why don't you maybe give us a little bit more of a background on yourself?
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here. Yeah, sure. I've been at True Ventures now for, if you can believe it, 17 years. So one of the partners here. Never thought I'd be in one place for that long, but when you're having fun, it's an awesome experience. Before that, I spent a lot of time in the operating world, mostly on the product side at a couple startups and one larger company. And then before that, spent a little time in the banking world, even in the venture world before that. So it's kind of a mix of operating and venture experience that's very common at True. You know, among our partners, we've started, north of 25 companies ourselves. But that's a little bit of my background.
Fantastic. And honestly, I've kind of been saying very excited to have you on because I think, as we mentioned, True Ventures have got an unbelievable portfolio across quite quite varied spectrum of startups. But even in cybersecurity, you've got some of those most reputable names in the market. But to kind of go into a little bit more detail about yourself personally, because you've worked with so many early stage founders. I mean, when it comes to having those initial conversations or when people are reaching out to you or you're kind of coming across different companies that are at that early stage, I mean, what really gets you excited when it comes to meeting a new entrepreneur?
Yeah, no, great question. I think there's so many factors that go into it, but one of the things that there's a couple things that really pop out at me. One is the why behind someone is doing it. We're very mission oriented here. So it's, and if you don't have a why or a purpose, like what is drawing you to this sort of larger problem that you're connected to, the journey becomes almost impossible because it is so hard. There's going to be so many moments where you're about to die and you have to persist through that. You have to navigate through that. And we as a partner want to help you do that. But if you don't have like that sort of North Star or that purpose, in anything in life, frankly, but like especially in a startup, it's really hard. It's really, really hard. And everybody's smart, everybody's got unique insights, but that to me is really critical. And I think the other thing, and it's a core tenet of True, it's one of the things we say all the time, is we're trying to maximize risk as an investor on product market timing. So is the founder kind of taking enough risk early? So we're early. We're not like, there's a lot of talk about consensus capital. We're contrarian capital, like super early. Before it's going to be great. That's what we invest. And so we want to know that that person is really thinking big, is willing, has the creativity to take those risks and wants to do that. And so when I see those two things in a market that's interesting, of course, and some of the table stakes that's there, I get very excited. And you usually know in that first meeting.
It's awesome to hear because I think it's so easy to forget sometimes that it's not just the product that makes a business, it's the people, and especially the people driving the ship, as you say. And ultimately, I get the experience of, you can tell when a founder and an executive truly believes in what they're doing because the passion is it's contagious.
Yes.
It's such a hard job as well. It's hard to build something from scratch and then take it to market and then succeed in doing it. So you're going to kind of have that, resilience. I suppose you've got to love what you do.
Yeah.
And kind of, cybersecurity is such a hot investment space. It's so crowded, it's noisy. Anybody that goes to kind of Black Hat or RSA or wherever it may be knows that you're kind of, feels like you're walking the Vegas Strip when you're on the on the floor. Yeah. I mean, if we're looking kind of just outside of, okay, somebody's got that real why, they've got that driver. Yeah. What makes like a cybersecurity startup stand out to you? Are there kind of some big opportunities or big things that you would say, look, if it's got X, Y, and Z, to me, that's a recipe for success.
Yeah, I think you're so right. It is so crowded, and it's rightfully so. Like there's so much money being spent on cybersecurity. It's like a continuous flow of it because the problems continue. I think there's a couple things beyond just the things that I just described, but you're looking for new attack surface areas, like from a market perspective, and is there a disruption in the market or is there a change? Like AI is basically a replatforming of everything, right? And we can get into all the details of that, but that creates different new surface areas that can be attacked. Now, that all said, to your point, there still could be like 50 startups going after the same thing because they may recognize the same insight. But what you hear is like you'll hear similar elements across maybe people who are pitching these same concepts, but the difference comes in if you can envision that founder being able to get in front of a CISO who's going to say, look, tell me right now, like because CISOs don't hold back from my experience, and they're just like, I see all this stuff all the time. Tell me right now what's going to differentiate you. Why is this going to be interesting? And you can kind of envision that founder being able to sell at that level, because it's a unique characteristic in all of infrastructure software where a lot of the language melts together. Is who has the technical chops. You got to be deep technically and product oriented. That's number one. We're not really investing in salespeople at the start of when we fund. It's product people. And can they also sell? Can they actually go toe to toe in front of that person and articulate a really interesting story and vision? Because that person's going to have to bet on them early. So is any early employee that's going to join. So is any customer. So is any potential acquirer. So it's like it's starting to get that feeling of whether that person can articulate a story, because can they garner the trust of someone who has no reason to trust them at all and no reason to actually spend any time with them. And so there's just these unique characteristics that we've seen with many founders, whether they be, Mitchell at Hashi or Doug at Duo or Tarun at Veza, like Edith at Solo, that you can tell when you meet them that they have that capability to get in front of folks and tell a story.
Yeah, for sure. And I even if you look at kind of one of the biggest things that obviously I always come across in cyber is when people talk about like the skill gap shortage and stuff. And one of especially when you're early stage and you're looking to scale the team, everybody has to wear hats, and a lot of the time it doesn't matter how technical your role is, you probably have to have some customer facing element. And people always talk about the biggest challenge really is what you just said there, is the ability to translate the technical and kind of let maybe whether it's business minded individuals or somebody who doesn't necessarily have that full technical capacity or the full understanding that the person that's built the product have, to really understand it and resonate with it as well. I think, and I suppose that it's probably important that's you need the person who's, again, driving the ship to have that ability, and also then the team as they continue to build. It's definitely something that we see. So it's interesting to see that kind of sentiment is also shared when it comes to that early stage investment conversation.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, out of curiosity, when because you mentioned there, obviously, it's not necessarily the salespeople that you're investing in at that point; it's the product point.
Yeah.
When obviously you're coming in at such an early stage, and that's always really challenging because it's kind of like it's hard to predict success from that side. And we've mentioned all these different things that you look for, but for anybody that's at that point, maybe they're at conception, maybe they're sat there thinking, you know what, I'm in a business, I identify a gap, I think I'm going to go found my own company or whatever it may be. Is there ever too early to reach out to you? Is there ever a point where it's kind of like, hey, like you need to have A, B, and C set up before you can even think about reaching out to us? Like when do you want these guys to kind of start getting on your radar?
Yeah, so we're really early. So there's never too early for us in that sense. So we want to meet great people, even as they're formulating ideas, like when we fund folks at the really earliest stages, like even in the consumer space, when we funded Fitbit, it was like kind of a foam product and just an idea and a space. And, when we funded, Duo or Hashi or Evident or all these various companies, even Veza. Veza was just actually, I'm looking at my whiteboard right now. He just drew something on the whiteboard, and so that's all it is. It's that's our model. Our model is to get in very early behind amazing founders and who know about markets before we know about markets, and really listen to them, and then take a lot of risk, as I mentioned earlier, and then go forward. So if people come to us when they actually have revenue and customers, it's probably too late because we start early. Or if they come to us in a very crowded space or a space that can't be reinvented and they're the fifth player in the space, then that's just not, it's too late for us because we're investing almost 3 to 5 years before the market's actually fully coming or developed in any way.
Yeah. No, it's really interesting to see. And I suppose you can, because it's probably so easy to sit there and think, well, my idea is not even more than an idea right now. How could somebody kind of be able to get behind that? But arguably, that's going to be what propels them forward and gives them that opportunity to build the idea. It's
and you're betting on the individual to figure it out because it's a 10-year, 15-year journey in a lot of cases. And it's like, you got to navigate. And so can this person navigate through all that?
Yeah, definitely. So what about when a founder comes to you for the first time? What would you say you wish that, okay, you've got this idea, you've kind of thought of something here and you're ready to kind of present it and say, look, I'm thinking of something, I think it could be the next Fitbit or, whatever it may be. Do you ever kind of wish that more of them understood like a bit more about pitching or building relationships? Are there any kind of do's or don'ts that even though it's super, super early that people should maybe have prepared?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. There's a lot of pieces to it, but I would say, you're a storyteller at that point. And so when you're it's a narrative that you're trying to present. So it's less about, for example, like what does the Gartner number say and the size of the market? We really don't care because the market is not here yet by definition and you're trying to perform it. So you kind of have to tell a story. You don't want to be, I think, trapped in slides. Like it's less about, there are occasions where a founder just wants to get to the next slide and make the point on the next slide. And what you're really having is a conversation. And the best pitches are the best ones where like it's really exciting is you're going back and forth, you're having a conversation, you're hearing the story, but the narrative has to be strong in the sense of, here's what I'm seeing, here's why I'm uniquely the person who to identify this, here's where we're going to start, and here's where we think the market is potentially going. It doesn't have to be right, by the way, but it's sort of an articulation of something that is clear, interesting, makes you kind of go like, wow, that is a really interesting way of looking at this. Because there are times, for example, where you can almost hear the same story 5 times in a row. The 6th person walks in and actually is in the same market, but tells it in a completely different way, just based on how they're thinking about where they can attack the problem and how they can attack the problem and how they can tell the story. So I think it's just really important to remember that that's what you are in those really, really early days. And then to not forget to talk about yourself and your story and your journey and why it's very easy to just jump in a product and say, this is what we're doing. Here's what we're targeting. It's like, follow this like exact playbook. We're trying to get to know you as a person, especially for True. Like our whole approach is like funding the whole person and getting to know the whole person. It's both sides. They're human beings. We think that venture capital is a very human business. So we want to know that side. So don't forget that side as well. Don't necessarily spend the whole time in the meeting on that. But we need to know who you are and why and what makes you tick as well.
Yeah, because I think, and it's been talked about before, but it's so easy to forget. You've mentioned it a couple of times as well, that this isn't like a 1-year journey or a 2-year journey. This is like a 5, 10, 15, 20 plus year journey that you're going on. So you're also going to be connected and working together for that amount of time. Like, you kind of need to go in and have that expectation of, we kind of got to be able to get along and sit in a room together and make tough decisions together and propel each other forward. We don't want to kind of be holding each other back. And it sounds like part of that is, you want to have that rapport and set those foundations of, it's almost like a relationship, isn't it? In the sense that you need to be able to feel comfortable saying, hey, I need to lean on you here, or hey, like, what direction should I go in? Because it's a real partnership by the sounds of it. It's that back and forth as you go through the journey.
Yeah, it's 100% that. And the other thing too is like relationships and partnerships, they can be messy. That's okay. There's lots of ups and downs. There's lots of back and forth. So your first pitch doesn't have to be like this perfect, pristine thing. It just has to be authentic. I mean, that's probably the other thing I would say is like, be who you are so that we can understand that. And we don't expect perfection. No one's perfect because this journey is going to have ups and downs. And there's going to be tons of mistakes. By the way, there's a whole bunch of mistakes. It's how you recover and learn from it and then move forward. And so that, and look, we can't be perfectly right. We can't know all of that in, you know, a 1.5 week span. Let's say we're meeting a founder, but we're going to try as best we can to figure that out. And that's what we're trying to figure out.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I suppose kind of like if we look at the journey then, so somebody's come to you at the really early stage, you know, they've got this fantastic idea that they're just, they know is going to change the world. And kind of they come to you, you have some really great meetings and so on. And it's okay, right, we're ready to move ahead here. There looks like there could be something. I mean, obviously, there's always the post support. Once the funding comes in, you don't then obviously walk away. That's kind of where the partnership truly gets to build. Yeah. I mean, when we look at that really early stage, what kind of do the next steps typically look like for you know, founders? Is it like, okay, now we need to build out a few extra people in your product and really get it refined? Is it kind of, oh, we might need to look at some go-to-market hires? Like, what does that typical kind of early stage process look like?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's a great question. I mean, for us, it's a lot of time. So we're funding product folks, product builders. A lot of times the product is not done. So it's really those first few engineers, which are critical. And oftentimes great founders, especially product founders, know the first 2 or 3 hires that they need to bring in. And at that time, it's really about building, but also like listening. It's like you're building, but not in, you know, underground in a dungeon somewhere. You're actually out there and continuing to talk to customers because you're in that search for product market fit. You don't want to hire sales and marketing too early at all. It's all about founder-led sales. It's also about finding that cohort that's going to be rabid, who loves your product and what you're doing, getting those first few people to buy in and then continuing to grow it. And there's so many factors that, you know, you got to think about, like what's the tone you're setting for your culture. Even in the early days, how are you thinking about, you know, speed of product development? How are you thinking about, you know, prioritizing customer voice in your environment? And if you don't sort of start doing those things early, it's very hard to bolt on later. They need to be core. They need to be sort of in a concentric circle. They need to be in the center, and then everything sort of needs to build around it. And then one of the things that we think about a lot is like we are very team-based. So there may be a partner, for example, that gets involved, but we don't have attribution inside our firm, which is very unique, you know, and that's on purpose because we want everybody involved in helping a founder. So there's no gates. So the founder for us is like, they can call me, but they can call Lars, who, you know, ran sales at 5 different companies or inside sales at 5 different companies just to get insight there, or Madeline, who has run HR at several high growth companies, or any one of my partners, and just spend time and understanding that. So we don't want our politics, which we don't have. We don't want those politics inside their boardroom while they're doing it. And so the job is to give space for them and then to give them all the resources they want at any time across our entire team, and then them to focus on the main thing. What's the main thing? Getting a great product out that people want. Don't forget the main part of the component right there. It's not the other stuff. It's very laser focused.
Yeah. It's really good to kind of hear that, because I think so many people can be really early to jump the gun on go to market, and they're kind of focused on, we need to make revenue, we need to bring in money to the business because that's, you know, what defines whether we're successful or not. But I suppose it can kind of be detrimental if you're going to market too quickly. You can, you know, for your reputation, and you don't want to kind of start off on the wrong foot when it comes to that. I suppose there's a difference between kind of doing a bit of R&D and getting that feedback kind of from people when it's still in prototype. But we do see it all the time. Kind of, I suppose it's that chase of revenue that it feels like it's a hard kind of bit of, I don't know what word I'm looking for here. I keep wanting to say purgatory, but that's just not so much more negative.
Yeah, and you don't want to chase the wrong revenue either, because sometimes you'll hire a seller in too quick, and you'll get revenue, but is it the right revenue? Is it repeatable revenue? Is it like sectors that you're focused on? And you bring in salespeople to enhance, I think, what you already know from a product perspective. You know that people want this product. Now it's time to bring in someone who can help you take that into overdrive. The salesperson is not going to help you figure out product market fit. Yeah. The founder has to figure out product market fit. Is a big core philosophy of ours.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, there's so much that you can unpack, because like you say, I mean, it's always really difficult, isn't it? Because there's so many people these days that come up with unbelievable product ideas, but there's just so much that goes into being a founder and the journey of building a business from the early stage. But it's great for people to kind of know that, hey, like there's companies out there like you guys are doing, where you kind of, let us be part of that journey and let us give you the best chance for success. Because ultimately, I think it's a superpower being able to recognize when to lean on other experts, because you don't have to be the expert in everything.
No, you don't. You do need help. You do need help along the way, and you need to communicate, and you need to be open. You need to be open about your problems, and that's why you got to find even a venture partner who you can be very comfortable with telling your worst situations to, like, and that you can call when things are really, really tough. And it's a phone call. It's not like going through and trying to set up an appointment. It's like literally texting that person. So that part is crazy critical when finding the right partner for yourself, who's going to be there in the worst of times for you. And it's hard to know that, you're not thinking that way when you're starting a company. You're thinking positively, as you should, but there are just going to be tough times. You're going to need a partner who understands that.
Yeah, most definitely. I think that is often what can define whether you're successful when building a startup, is how you handle the hard times, but arguably who you've got there for you during them as well. Because impossible to ride them through alone.
Yeah, none of us can do it alone. No, in anything in life, you need people around you.
Literally, we're made to be around other people. We're social creatures. Exactly. Well, to close off, Puneet, because I think this has been an unbelievable episode, and it's loads and loads of kind of valuable things for early stage guys to unpack. But to kind of close off here, if we were to put you in a founder's shoes, and there's somebody who's really early stage that are building in cyber today, what kind of would be that first step? What would be the first thing that you're saying, okay, this is really what I'd be doing right now if I was serious about, I think I've got a great idea, this is what I'd do?
Yeah, no, great question. Look, first of all, I don't say this lightly. I can't imagine a better time to start a company right now. I can't imagine a better time to be an investor, and I can't imagine a better time to be a builder. And the reason is that we obviously have this massive platform shift with AI, which means that I actually honestly think every part of security, the security stack, if you want to call it, is essentially being reinvented. It's, now you have all these, how do you do, analytics on your code, right? How do you think about security related to the deployment of code? How do you think about endpoint security? How do you think about anomalies? How do you think about failure detection? All of that is changing in an environment where now you're going to have thousands of agents running around that, are non-deterministic, are thinking for themselves, have identities of their own. And so the whole thing is an open sandbox right now. So that's the first thing to get in your brain, that the opportunity is here now. The second thing is to not be afraid of it. Don't assume just because it's wide open, everybody else is going to do it. Therefore, if you believe in yourself and go out and find it, and then what I would do is pick one of these areas and just go deep and figure out, because it's wide open now, talk to some customers, get some ideas. You are not trying to find perfect. You're never going to find 5 customers who are going to be like, this is the exact thing you should do. What you're trying to do is just listen. You're not trying to influence them. And then you're going to hear some nugget or something in there. And then you have to have the faith to say, I'm going to take that little nugget and I'm going to build off of that, because that thing in and of itself, I can't justify and say this is going to be $1 billion company, because who knows? But are there ingredients in there that make it fit? And then I think the other thing is go find your co-founders, because as we've been saying throughout this whole thing, it's not, you can't do it alone. There are great solo founders, by the way, who we funded. Actually, they're a special breed. But if you can find people that you can go on this journey with you, who are also willing to jump into the vagueness of all this, then I think you're off to the races. So a big part of this is just deciding to do it, and then feeling having the will to keep going when you get punched in the face. And that's a big part of the whole thing.
No, what an incredible way to close out, in my opinion, what's been a phenomenal episode. I mean, Puneet, thank you so much for sharing such thoughtful insight into kind of what it really takes to build. And I think, yeah, if anything's a key takeaway here, it's like you mentioned earlier, it's never too early, and I think right now it's such an exciting time to be in this space and in this industry that if you don't capitalize on it now, you might lose the chance. So kind of don't be afraid to take that leap. I mean, also at the same time, I appreciate it's not for everyone to go through the journey of being a founder.
Yeah.
But honestly, it's been such a pleasure having you here today. And to our listeners, as always, make sure to subscribe and share this episode with some of your peers. But get connected with us on LinkedIn. But I highly recommend get connected with Puneet and the team. I think, especially if any of this episode resonates with you, it is most definitely, as you can probably tell, worthwhile reaching out, even if you're still just a thought on a whiteboard. But that's it for today. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next time for more conversations shaping cyber.
Thank you so much.